We now know that at that time, between 12,800 and 11,600 years ago, truly global cataclysmic events involving rapid rises in sea level did occur.
Researchers in Turkey now claim they found indisputable evidence that the story of Noah's Ark was not a cautionary tale about the consequences of forsaking God, but a verifiable historical event.
High in the rugged mountains of Turkey, a strange ship-like formation has stirred curiosity across the world. When archaeologists began studying the site, they uncovered unusual structural patterns beneath the surface, features that sparked fresh debate while echoing one of humanity's oldest stories. Could this mysterious shape be connected to the biblical tale of Noah's Ark? The answer is far from certain, yet the discovery has fascinated scientists, historians, and believers alike. As researchers continue to examine the evidence, one question keeps resurfacing. Could this remote corner of Turkey hold clues tied to ancient myths passed down for generations? And if something truly lies buried beneath these mountains, what untold secrets about our past are waiting to emerge? This enigma is known as the Durupinar Formation. Hidden near Mount Ararat, surrounded by snow-covered peaks, this isolated valley has long captured the imagination of explorers and researchers. The formation itself stretches about 538 feet in length and bears a striking resemblance to the outline of a massive ship embedded in the earth. For decades, it has fueled one of history's most intriguing mysteries. Could this be the final resting place of Noah's Ark? If you're fascinated by mysteries like this, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, because the deeper we dig, the more incredible the story becomes. The story began in the 1950s, when a Turkish army captain spotted the unusual shape while flying overhead. From the air, the outline was unmistakable, a large, boat-like structure seemingly frozen in time. News of the discovery spread quickly, drawing crowds of curious visitors. Soon, media outlets began covering the story, and images of the formation reached audiences around the globe. By the 1960s, international attention had grown significantly. The BBC sent a film crew to document the site, while National Geographic photographers trekked up the mountain to capture its unusual form. The resemblance to the biblical description of the Ark was hard to ignore. But this was more than just a visual curiosity. Over time, the Durupinar Formation attracted serious scientific interest. Teams of archaeologists and researchers traveled to the site, hoping to uncover the truth behind its origins. Among them was Professor Faruk Kaya from Agri Ibrahim Tsechen University, who described his first visit as deeply surreal. Walking across the mound, he said, felt like standing on the spine of something ancient, something hidden beneath layers of earth and time. The investigation began with standard scientific methods, mapping the site, taking measurements, and collecting samples. What surprised even the skeptics was the scale. The formation's length, 538 feet, closely aligns with the 300 cubits mentioned in the biblical account of Noah's Ark. Its proportions seem to mirror the ancient description in a way that was difficult to dismiss. Still, researchers remained cautious. While the similarities were striking, they stopped short of making definitive claims. As Professor Kaya noted, the parallels were remarkable, but not yet proof. Geological analysis added another layer of complexity. The formation was largely made of limonite, a type of iron ore, suggesting it had been shaped by powerful natural forces. This raised a critical question. Was this simply an unusual geological formation? Or could it be the fossilized remains of an ancient structure? To dig deeper, a major study was launched in 2021. Researchers from Istanbul Technical University, Agri Ibrahim Chechen University, and Andrews University in the United States joined forces to examine the site using advanced scientific techniques. Their goal was to explore what lay beneath the surface. By drilling into the formation and analyzing the soil, they uncovered something unexpected. Laboratory tests revealed that the soil inside the structure contained nearly 3 times more organic matter and potassium than the surrounding area. This difference suggested the possible presence of decayed organic material, something that could align with the remnants of a large, ancient structure. According to lead researcher Andrew Jones, these findings hint at the decomposition of wood or other organic elements preserved within the mudflow over time. While the mystery is far from solved, each new discovery adds another piece to the puzzle. Whether the Durupinar formation is a natural phenomenon or something far more extraordinary, one thing is certain. It continues to challenge what we think we know about history, mythology, and the hidden stories buried beneath our feet. Beneath the surface, the real intrigue began to unfold. When Andrew Jones and his team brought in ground-penetrating radar, they weren't just scanning dirt, they were mapping what looked like an entirely hidden structure below the mound. The images that came back were hard to ignore. They revealed shapes resembling long passageways, layered sections like decks, and sharp, geometric patterns. Strangely, these features echoed the internal layout described in the biblical account of Noah's Ark. Jones spoke about the findings with a mix of caution and excitement. He explained that if this were a human-built vessel, this is exactly the kind of structure you'd expect to see. What stood out most was how these features appeared only within the boundaries of the ship-shaped formation. According to the scans, there seemed to be 3 substantial layers stacked within the structure, with a central corridor running between them, almost like a tunnel cutting through the middle. The soil told its own story. Samples taken from inside the formation contained clay-like material, traces of marine deposits, and even remnants linked to sea life. These weren't random findings. They pointed to a time when the area had been underwater. For researchers like Professor Farooq Kaya, this added another layer to the mystery. In his view, the evidence suggested that the region had once supported life, but had also experienced a dramatic submersion, possibly tied to a large-scale, catastrophic event. What made things even more compelling was the timeline. Radiocarbon testing placed the materials somewhere between 3,500 and 5,000 years old, right within the window often associated with the biblical flood narrative. For many, that overlap was difficult to dismiss as mere coincidence. As news of these discoveries spread, media outlets around the world quickly picked up the story. Headlines highlighted the possibility of new evidence supporting the legend of Noah's Ark. Major networks and publications ran detailed reports, sparking widespread debate. Scientists, historians, and everyday people all weighed in, some intrigued, others skeptical. Even the researchers themselves were careful not to jump to conclusions. While they acknowledged that the findings could point toward a historical basis for the story, they avoided making bold claims. There was a sense of excitement, yes, but also restraint, and skepticism never disappeared. Many geologists continued to argue that the formation could be explained entirely by natural processes, centuries of mudflows, pressure, and erosion shaping the land into something that only appears man-made. From their perspective, unusual patterns don't necessarily equal human construction. Even Kaya, despite his fascination with the site, admitted the limitations. The dating alone, he said, isn't enough to prove anything definitive. Fully uncovering the truth would require years, perhaps decades, of careful excavation and analysis. Still, the mystery refuses to fade. For locals living near the site, the formation is a source of pride and wonder. For scientists, it remains a puzzle demanding patience and precision, and for millions around the world, it represents something more, a lingering question that bridges history, belief, and curiosity. Because when science begins to peel back the layers of the Earth itself, you can't help but wonder, what if something extraordinary really is buried there? At the Durupinar site, that question continues to drive exploration. Researchers gather at the base of the massive boat-shaped hill, preparing to probe deeper than ever before. For decades, debates have circled this place. Was it formed purely by nature, or could it be the preserved outline of an ancient vessel? Now, with modern technology capable of seeing beneath layers of rock and soil, scientists are closer than ever to finding answers. The work begins with the steady hum of generators and the careful calibration of radar equipment. In the cold morning air, Andrew Jones stands nearby, watching closely. After more than a decade studying this site, every scan, every signal could bring them one step closer to uncovering the truth hidden beneath the mountain. When asked about the mission, the response was clear and grounded. The team behind Forbidden History wasn't chasing myths or trying to prove a legend. They were there to let the evidence speak for itself. In fact, many of the technicians operating the equipment weren't even focused on the biblical connections. For them, it was simply another scientific investigation. But that mindset began to shift the moment the first radar images appeared. As the scans started forming on their screens, initial skepticism quickly turned into surprise. Instead of the random disordered patterns typically seen in natural terrain, the radar revealed something far more structured. Clean parallel lines, defined shapes, patterns that seemed intentional rather than accidental. One operator later remarked that formations like these were nothing like what you'd expect from natural geological processes. The data pointed to a central passage stretching roughly 234 feet, with smaller sections branching off on either side, almost like rooms or compartments. Even more unusual were the sharp, right-angled edges, something rarely produced by nature alone. Inside the research tent, excitement grew when lead soil scientist William Crabtree began analyzing the findings more closely. Comparing samples from inside and outside the formation, he noticed a striking difference. The interior soil contained significantly more organic material and higher potassium levels, both strong indicators of decomposed wood. To him, it aligned with what you might expect if a massive wooden structure had once existed there. His observations quickly spread among the press, gathered nearby, fueling headlines that would soon reach audiences around the world. Then came the resistivity scans. Using electrical currents to map variations beneath the surface, the team uncovered even more compelling details. The structure appeared to extend more than 40 feet underground. Beneath the surface, large curved formations, resembling ribs, arched through the interior, similar to the framework of a ship. Even more intriguing, the scans suggested 3 distinct levels, separated by what looked like a central passageway or stair-like division. John Larson, the engineer leading this part of the research, didn't hesitate to share his view. From his perspective, this wasn't just a random accumulation of rock. It looked like something constructed. As these revelations surfaced, Media outlets quickly picked up the story. Headlines spread rapidly, with reports suggesting that long-hidden secrets at the site were finally being uncovered. Interviews followed, including one with Andrew Jones, who described the discovery of tunnel-like spaces, layered sections, and internal corridors. To him, the findings closely matched what you'd expect if you were searching for a man-made vessel, though even he spoke with a mix of confidence and amazement. And the deeper they looked, the more unusual details emerged. Even the vegetation offered clues. The grass covering the formation appeared slightly different in color compared to the surrounding land, a subtle but important sign that something beneath the surface might be influencing the soil. Crabtree described it as a kind of living fingerprint, suggesting that whatever lay below was actively affecting the ground above. Further testing supported this idea. Soil samples taken from within the formation contained nearly double the organic material and significantly higher potassium levels than those outside. These are classic markers of decayed organic matter, possibly the remnants of something that once lived or was built long ago. The scans also hinted at structural damage. Certain sections appeared fractured and displaced, as if the formation had shifted or collided with something massive in the past. Some researchers speculated that if this had once been a vessel, it might have moved down the mountainside before striking rock and breaking apart. Using advanced imaging software, scientists filtered out layers of mud and sediment to focus on denser materials. What remained was a striking image, a streamlined, symmetrical shape resembling the hull of a ship, with its internal framework still visible even after thousands of years underground. And perhaps the most intriguing part of all was just how closely these patterns seemed to match the descriptions passed down through ancient texts. Jones shared these developments during a phone interview, his tone balancing caution with growing excitement. As global attention intensified, the team behind the scans emphasized that their work was far from complete. Plans were already in motion for future drilling and additional non-destructive surveys, carefully designed to preserve the integrity of the site, which remains vulnerable to harsh winters and shifting earth flows. "We're only just starting," Crabtree said, his voice carrying both the weight of history and the spark of discovery. "Whatever this is, it's incredible, and we owe it to the world to understand it." As the sun dipped behind Mount Ararat, the researchers packed away their instruments, but their thoughts lingered beneath the surface, where the ground still held answers waiting to be uncovered. For the first time in centuries, technology offered a way to listen to the earth itself. Could the soil remember what once existed there, not in visible ruins, but in chemical traces left behind? And what if those traces weren't just natural echoes of time, but signs of something far more extraordinary? Chemical imprints and soil mysteries. Beneath the rolling terrain of the Durupinar site in eastern Turkey, scientists turned their attention away from large artifacts and toward something much smaller: soil. At first light, a team approached the boat-shaped formation with careful precision. Instead of digging for visible relics, they focused on collecting microscopic samples, tiny fragments of earth that might hold the biochemical fingerprints of the past. Each sample was handled meticulously, dark, almost ebony in color, and rich with an earthy scent. The soil was sealed in labeled containers and transported to a temporary field lab. There, under quiet concentration, researchers began analyzing the composition. measuring organic content, potassium levels, and acidity. The results were striking. Soil taken from within the formation contained nearly 3 times more organic material than samples collected just a few meters away. Andrew Jones later explained that such elevated levels strongly suggest the presence of decomposed organic matter, possibly wood or plant-based material that had broken down over a long period of time. But that was only the beginning. Further analysis revealed unusually high potassium levels, far above what is typically found in the surrounding landscape. Since potassium is commonly released during the decomposition of wood and vegetation, its presence added another layer to the mystery. Geologist Professor Farooq Kaya offered a measured interpretation. The combination of elevated potassium and altered soil chemistry could point to prolonged organic decay beneath the surface, consistent with what might be expected if a large wooden structure had once been there. The soil's acidity told a similar story. While surrounding samples showed neutral pH levels, those from within the formation were distinctly more acidic. Scientists often associate this kind of shift with long-term decomposition processes, where organic material slowly breaks down and alters the chemical environment around it. Reports from independent analyses noted that the site's soil carried a chemical signature rarely seen in typical geological formations, suggesting that something unusual had influenced its composition over time. As the final samples were sealed and the equipment powered down, a quiet realization settled over the team. The evidence was compelling, but not conclusive. Beneath the surface, the soil had revealed patterns, chemical traces that hinted at something far beyond ordinary geology: elevated organic content, unusual potassium levels, shifts in acidity. Individually, they raised questions. Together, they told a story. But what that story truly meant remained uncertain. Were these the faint remains of something once built by human hands, or simply nature crafting illusions over thousands of years? No one could say for sure. As the sun disappeared behind Mount Ararat, the researchers stepped away from the site, leaving behind a landscape that still held its secrets. For now, the answers remain buried, waiting.